Hi guys, it's Mr. C. I told you that I'd help you finish these notes, so I'm just going to pick up where we left off for this very first day of Chapter 2. If you guys would just follow along and fill these in with me, we'll be in great shape. We left off on perfect squares. Perfect squares, we can fill in the blank here and say a perfect square is perfect because the square root is a whole number. Well, that's not very good. A whole number. There you go. 49 is a perfect square because the square root of 49 is 7. There's a whole bunch of examples. The square root of 36 is 6. The square root of 81 is 9. I think you guys understand that. I just think of it this way. When you have a square and you know that the area of that square is 25 square units, then you can easily find the side length. It's 5 on every side. So it's the perfect type of square to find the side length for. That's the way I think of it. If we move on to the next slide, a non-perfect square is a whole number whose square root is not a whole number. In fact, it ends up being irrational. Okay? If you use your calculator and you try and find the square root of 40, it does something like this, 6.32451 or something. And it just goes on to infinity. Any of those in-between numbers, in between the perfect squares, are a bunch of non-perfect squares. So if you look on a number line and you've got, we've got the square root of 4, the square root of 9, the square root of 16. Those mean like, 2, 3, and 4. So there's all kinds of imperfect squares that fall in between, like the square root of 15 or the square root of 8. Those are imperfect. There's not a rational answer for that. We can estimate those, but they're non-perfect. We go down here to the bottom. You need to estimate the value of non-perfect squares. You gotta determine which two whole numbers it falls to. Okay. 11 is a non-perfect square. 11 falls between the perfect squares of, like, for example, if I thought, well, if it was just a little bit bigger, I would love for it to be 16. So I'd be trying to find the square root of 16. If it was just a little bit smaller, then I would try to find the square root of 9. Those would be nice. Therefore, square root of 11 is between, 9 and 16. Since the square root of 9 equals 3 and the square root of 16 equals 4, then the square root of 11 is between 3 and 4. I'll put it on the number line real quick. If I've got square root of 9, square root of 16, that means 3 and 4. And then I want to find square root of 11. I'll put a little line up here. Now I can bring this over. I can decide which one it is closer to. Oh man, I undid it. It's actually closer to square root of 9 than it is to 16. The difference between 11 and 9 is 2. The difference between 11 and 16 is 4. So if I had to estimate to the nearest whole number, oops, let me fix that. Then it would be 3. All right, moving on to our next slide. Absolute value. Hope that this is a review for you. Absolute value is the distance. A number is from 0. Okay, distance from 0. Remember, distance itself is always positive. Okay. So if we're just like talking in real life, here's 0, here's a -5, and here's a +5. If I'm standing there, and I'm trying to figure out how far to get to 0, I'm gonna have to go 5 real units to get there. If I'm over here, I'm standing here, and I need to get to 0. It's 5 real units. So these bars on either side of our numbers, always, they represent absolute value. So it's going to be a positive amount. The absolute value of negative 23 is 23. The absolute value of the square root of 62 is equal to the square root of 62, which you can use your calculator, or you can estimate that to say, you know what, that's really close to the square root of 64. So I'm going to say it's about 8. And then here, we've got an expression on the inside. So I'm going to do 6 minus 5 plus 4. That gives me, I'm going to simplify this down. On the inside, it's the absolute value of 5, so it ends up being a positive 5. Now, it says, what is the difference between negative 47 and the absolute value of negative 47 and negative absolute value of negative 47? Well, let's evaluate each one. You just got to break it down. Don't go too fast. The absolute value of negative 47 is 47. And the absolute value of negative 47 is 47. But I've got a negative sign on the outside. Now, I have to remember that difference means what? Subtract. I've gotten rid of my absolute value signs, and now I need to subtract 47 and negative 47. In the end, we see that we add those together. So what is 47 plus 47? I believe that is 94. That's the difference between the absolute value of negative 47 and negative absolute value of negative 47. Kind of crazy. There's a lot of details there. I think they were trying to throw you off with that problem. All right, I'm going to pause right there. It looks like that's the end of our lesson. You guys should be able to finish your homework. Don't forget to look in your book. I know it's big and heavy, but feel free to go back through there, especially when it comes to your rational and irrational numbers. Those are like definitions that maybe you don't have like downloaded in your brain yet, but that's a great resource for you. Okay. Also, feel free to Google it. That's not a problem. Okay, we will see you tomorrow.